breaks down the final days of this race for New York City mayor and what Democrats can learn from Zohran Mamdani's campaign. But first, as always, let's get to some news. Joining me today is Chris Sommerfeldt, senior City Hall reporter with the New York Daily News. Chris, welcome back to the show.
Good to be with you.
Okay, you know I love polls. We talked yesterday about the Marist poll, which had Zohran Mamdani up over Andrew Cuomo by 15 points, but the Emerson poll also came out and shows Mamdani with a 25% lead over Cuomo and winning with 50% of the vote. That's his best showing in any of the polls. And Chris, polls are not predictive. We always have to say that, but they can show voters where momentum is. And so if I'm Mamdani, I'm feeling pretty good today.
I think he does, and we've heard him express a lot of confidence here. I will say that poll that you just mentioned from Emerson, it is an outlier. We have not seen any other polls predict that wide of a margin for him. But he's expressed a lot of confidence since that poll came out, and we've also seen it in where he's been campaigning. He's no longer looking to shore up his base. He's going to senior centers to talk to older
Right.
voters who predominantly have polled against him. You see in most crosstabs in the surveys that they actually overwhelmingly go for Andrew Cuomo. So he's playing offense here and trying to attract new voters as the polls are showing him far, far ahead.
Yeah, I want to get into that a little bit more because you're right. This to me shows some confidence in the kinds of voters he has shored up. Early voting is showing that older voters are coming out in numbers, and conventional wisdom would say that that favors Cuomo. But in a recent piece you wrote that Mamdani is trying now to appeal to those older voters to try to curb Cuomo's influence with them. That, like you said, shows me he feels good about his base. He's now trying to put get some extra points, like get some extra credit in this race.
I definitely think so. And I will also say, while there's a slim majority in the early turnout numbers of older voters,
Mm.
you got to keep in mind that not all older voters above age 55 are automatically Andrew Cuomo voters. Some of them might be
Yes,
Curtis Sliwa voters.
sure.
There are older voters too that support Mamdani. Just because Cuomo has a little
Yep.
bit of an edge in the polls among that constituency doesn't mean that they're all automatically Cuomo supporters.
No, that's important to say too. Mamdani's doing something else that's interesting. He's campaigning at night. And
Mhm.
last night he was at LaGuardia Airport canvassing the cab line, not just the passengers waiting in line, but the cab drivers too, targeting like blue collar workers. And it reminded me of a line that a friend of mine, Congressman Tim Ryan of Ohio, he always likes to say when he's campaigning. He says he's running for the people who shower after work. And it's such an evocative line. He uses it a lot. It always sounds really, really good to me because if you're a person that showers after work, you don't need that explained. You know exactly what that means. And so to me, it feels like Mamdani is making this very smart outreach to blue collar voters where they're at. They're working at night in a lot of these cases. What did you make of that?
I think it's exactly as you say. He's been doing this throughout the campaign. You might remember during the primary, he did a number of stops like this too, where he would campaign in the middle of the night. He memorably walked from the top of Manhattan to the bottom of Manhattan for, I don't know, it took something like 6 hours. I think he's trying to do what you just said: meet voters where they are. As these workers are coming off in the middle of the night, to his point, they are very rarely targeted with canvassing operations. So he's trying to actually reach those voters. But we'll see how successful he actually is in doing that.
We will, but I have to imagine, like, if I'm a cab driver at 11 p.m. at LaGuardia and the front runner for mayor shows up to
Yeah.
talk to me, that goes a long way. That's you're coming to me at my work, not even at my home, not even just knocking on doors. You're coming to meet me while I'm working. You're understanding my life. I just think that is incredibly smart politics.
No, I think it is too. And, he's sitting down with many of these workers and having, post shift dinner and talking to them
Yeah.
about their work issues. It's smart retail
So smart.
politics.
So smart. CNN Report talks about Cuomo's last stand and how he's, quote, zigzagging between optimism and despair in these final hours. And we've noted that. We've noted the ugly texts that some of the super PACs that are supporting him have been sending, but also like the upbeat tone of his latest ad. It's kind of a kitchen sink approach. Is it working in this final 11th hour of the campaign?
I think we saw this was an interesting detail in one of the new tabs. This strategy of trying to appeal to Republicans actually
Right.
appears to be working quite a bit.
Mm.
You have a big swing in Republicans running to Cuomo and deserting Curtis Sliwa after Cuomo and his campaign and the supporting super PACs have really been hitting that message. A vote
Yes.
for Sliwa is a vote for Mamdani. So I do think it's working to a certain extent, but to your point, the kind of split screen of the two messages from Andrew Cuomo are a little bit contradictory, to put it mildly.
I think you're right. Chris, don't go anywhere. I've got more questions for you after the break. More Battleground NYC when we return. We're back with more Battleground NYC, the fight for your vote. Let's get back to more news from the campaign trail. Back with me is Chris Sommerfeldt, senior City Hall reporter, New York Daily News. Chris, let's dig deep for a minute. There's a new report in Gothamist that examines the fears among some Black voters that a vote for Mamdani is a vote for gentrification. Mm-hmm. Now, his base, we know, has even been labeled team gentrification, suggesting his campaign relies on a coalition of young, affluent New Yorkers who will eventually displace longtime lower-income residents. It's a critique even Hakeem Jeffries has parroted. What more can you tell us about this concern inside a very important voting bloc?
I do think it is a real concern, and you have also seen it reflected in how much support Zohran Mamdani has been able to garner from African-American communities around the city. It is one of his weak spots. And that might in part be because of that concern. There is this almost stereotype at this point, right? That Zohran Mamdani supporters are kind of Bernie bros, these quasi-socialist young professionals who make six-figure salaries, but read a lot of Marx in college and like left-wing ideas. I think it kind of also eludes reality a little bit in the sense that that is not the entirety of his base. We saw during the primary that he had a lot of voters come out from districts that don't even generally vote in local elections. A lot of Southeast Asian communities, large Muslim turnout. So I do think that report from Gothamist certainly illustrates a real problem for Mamdani. It's more nuanced and complicated than that.
Okay, good. Let's broaden out now. We're entering our 5th week of a government shutdown just as New Yorkers go to the polls next week. SNAP benefits will be denied to millions of New Yorkers. How do you expect voting in this climate to impact the race? And will it be to Mom Donnie's advantage or perhaps to Cuomo's or Sliwa's? How do you make sense of where we're at amidst all of this?
I think overwhelmingly the tide is turning in Trump's disfavor. And I'm saying that in the sense that a lot of Americans are starting to point the blame at the Republicans for the shutdown, which is what's causing this cutoff of SNAP benefits. On paper, I think that might benefit Zohran Mamdani. He has been the most anti-Trump candidate out there. There can be a lot of resentment among voters that might turn them to go and vote for the most anti-Trump candidate in the race. Cuomo, as you've covered on this program, has his own Trump ties, kind of his own associations with Donald Trump. Curtis Lee was the Republican in the race. That's a natural Trump connection.
Yeah, I think you're right. Governor Hochul is already declaring a food emergency due to the ongoing shutdown and the SNAP benefits ending. Logistically, you tell me, is this something that Eric Adams will have to deal with in the coming weeks as the incumbent and outgoing mayor? Or will the new mayor, who won't officially be sworn in until January, will he inherit this problem immediately?
I guess it depends on how long the shutdown runs, right? Like that's the $400 million question, is whether or not this shutdown is ever going to come to an end. But in the interim, Eric Adams is the mayor, and he's going to have to deal with this problem. I will say yesterday, after Governor Hochul announced a state of emergency and some new state funding to supplement the expiring SNAP benefits, Eric Adams also did his own announcement of $15 million in emergency food funding. That is a drop in the bucket in comparison to what's actually needed. But, we are seeing that the mayor is trying to do something to address this problem.
I just want to know also, the race is going to end on election day or shortly thereafter if it's very close, but there's going to be so much more to cover. And, that includes the transition immediately, and then the new mayor's first 100 days. Mm-hmm. I'm just so curious as a reporter who covers City Hall, who covers this race, what kinds of stories are you looking ahead to?
During the transition, the most obvious ones are going to be who is, the next mayor, by all indications, Zohran Mamdani, if you trust the polls. Who is this candidate going to staff his cabinet with? Mm-hmm. Who's going to be the top appointees in his administration? The next first deputy mayor, the next, commissioner of the police department. All of these questions are some of the immediate ones. I think more broadly, what me and other reporters are going to be looking at is how exactly Donald Trump, if Mamdani indeed wins, is going to respond. Is he going to try to send in the National Guard, as he has threatened to do? Is he going to try to take other punitive actions against New York City if Mamdani wins? That's something that's going to be a very serious issue to look at.
Things I'm sure, like, you never in your political career, in your journalism career, thought you'd be covering that storyline in New York City, but we're living in such wild and crazy times. It's scary stuff, but also, I'm sure from where you sit, exciting to cover all of this. I know I'm excited to cover this race and going forward. Chris, thanks so much for bringing us all of your great reporting. We really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me on.
Okay, and don't go anywhere. When we come back, will the National Democratic Party use the lessons learned from Zohran Mamdani's campaign strategy to their benefit, or will they take the wrong lessons? More on that when we come back with Battleground NYC. We're back with Battleground NYC, the fight for your vote. And joining me now for the bigger picture is Ester Fuchs, professor of public policy and political science at Columbia University. She's also co-chair of Columbia's anti-Semitism task force. Esther, welcome back to the show.
Great to be here.
Yeah, it's great to see you. So we're just 4 days away from the general election. What's your assessment of the state of the race today?
Well, I expected this to be a sleepier race at the end, to be honest, since Mamdani has been so far ahead in all of the polls. But Andrew Cuomo somehow decided to come back to life and find his voice. And he was very effective in the last debate.
Yeah.
It's clearly not going to be enough to put him over the top, in my view. But This race has definitely tightened up. I mean, you discussed the polls, and there's one, that puts him at still way ahead, the Quinnipiac poll. But in the Marist poll, he's only, Mamdani is 16 points ahead now. That's a big lead. But frankly, it's all about turnout. Once again, turnout.
That's right.
And turnout has this.
It's what I always say, whether I'm covering a presidential or a local, we won't know till we know. Okay. We won't know till we know.
Right.
And importantly, we won't know why until we get exit polling. So, I mean, all of the polls and, what you're seeing in the streets, and it's all just speculation until we actually know. You're doing some exciting things around this campaign, though. This week, you had an event that examined some critical issues. The first looked at the impact of federal cuts on cities. What were the main takeaways from that?
Yeah, this was an amazing event. And, we had a couple of heavy hitters there. Mayor Morial from the Urban League and Jack Lew, the former budget director, in that particular panel. And, everybody is concerned about the big, beautiful bill. And the fact that I thought one of the most interesting points is that bill, it has nothing to do with balancing the budget. It was literally moving money out of domestic policies that most people really value, regardless of whether they're from red or blue states, and moving them into ICE enforcement and into the military. So at the end, we're probably have a greater budget deficit than we had before because of cutting taxes on the wealthy. And so the concern from this group about the big, beautiful bill, as that's the formal name, kind of blows me away. That's the name of a piece of legislation, okay, is really something that's going to impact us directly in New York. And that is sort of what the second panel really discussed. And Kathy Wild from the Partnership was on that panel. Jennifer Jones Austin from Protestant Welfare. These are names familiar to the New York City folks in your audience. And John Liu, the former controller. This also was a sort of heavy panel. Sestaro, the former housing commissioner. They're identifying serious impacts from this federal budget on New York City. And, you don't have to be a rocket scientist or a policy expert to see this on the ground now. Freezing SNAP is just a disaster. 80% of the people who receive SNAP work. So this idea now, that somehow this is something that really will change the way people use this is ridiculous. People need this benefit to make ends meet. It's really important. The other things, of course, that are really important are about ICE enforcement in the city and infrastructure, freezing the infrastructure money for the Second Avenue subway and the tunnel to New Jersey. This is really extraordinary. These are usually nonpartisan issues, and we're really up for a lot of pain in New York.
The second issue you looked at were the policy challenges facing the city's next mayor when it comes to childcare and food insecurity and affordable housing. What were the takeaways from that?
So this is something that I've been working on for quite some time. Since COVID, we have a survey that we've been doing almost twice a year in New York. It's called Communities Speak. And the whole idea was to get information about communities and their needs, as opposed to the sort of normal surveys that ask, how am I doing and what would you like to see government do? Because everybody loves government to do, everything in New York and spend more money. So, we have enormous problems around childcare affordability, and they're persistent. 29% of families have problems paying for childcare, and there's not enough childcare spaces. So this is a problem that extends across the city. Of course, 1 in 4 people can't afford housing, and we have food insecurity, and SNAP is going to make it even worse.
Yeah, of course. Okay, Esther, I've got some more questions for you after the break, so don't go anywhere. More Battleground NYC after this. And we're back with more Battleground NYC, the fight for your vote, joined one more time by Ester Fuchs, professor of public policy and political science at Columbia University. She's also the co-chair of Columbia's anti-Semitism task force. Esther, we've seen record early voting turnout in this election. The other work you're doing is centered around a new digital tool to boost voter turnout. It's like a Tinder style app. Is that right?
Yes. I mean, I have the gift of working in a university with wonderful young people. And I've had an app website called Who's on the Ballot for over a decade, which is simple, and just gives people information about candidates and where to vote. These students came to me with Pala, that it means pigeon in Spanish, and sort of, that's good for New York pigeon. And it is a Tinder style app, and they put it together with, the assistance of a couple of faculty for this New York City mayor's race. You can download it from both Google and Apple App Store for free. And it's so amazing. We were able to focus on 25 issues. You just swipe, and then you get the candidate's position on issues, and then there's an algorithm that puts together all your views and tells you who's your best match. It's not perfect. Being an old timer, I'm kind of nervous about those things, but I loved it. I think it's amazing, and hopefully it'll get, young people who tend to not pay attention.
Yeah. That's great. Good. While I have you, because as I mentioned, you are the co-chair of Columbia's anti-Semitism task force, I know that Mamdani has done some work to assuage, fears of Jewish voters and other people. I'm not a Jewish voter. I have similar fears about how he'll either protect Jewish voters from anti-Semitism or deal with the whole Gaza issue. I'm wondering, did the work he did it make a difference, do you think? And did it satisfy you?
Well, I think much of his outreach did make a difference. I think he just went across the board to every religious institution who would engage with him, and I think that's very important. Do I think it's sufficient? No. And do I think that the proof will be in the pudding? That's where it will be, that if he wins, there's going to be a lot of work to do. I don't believe he's anti-Semitic in the sense that, he would discriminate against Jews, but there are many things that he says that would never be tolerated if you put it in the context of other groups, other groups in our population. When it comes to globalize the Antifada, he says, I'll discourage people from saying that. Just fill in any other thing that says, kill this group.
Yeah.
And all you can do is say, I'll discourage people from saying, it's just not enough. And, he already said he won't march in the Israel Day Parade. This is symbolic politics. Mayors have no role in the Middle East conflict, okay? But this is the largest Jewish population outside of Israel.
Yeah.
And the mayor needs to demonstrate that if, God forbid, something happens that is bad and for the Jewish community, that he will be there to protect them. And I believe he would be, but I think a lot of people still are very, very concerned. And he needs to do better with his language. He just needs to step up and say what people need to hear. And he hasn't been able to do that. And that, to me, has been disappointing.
Thank you for addressing that. Also, the last time you were here, I asked you about the advice you would offer Democrats about nationalizing this New York City mayoral race. Some important ways they could nationalize this race, and some ways they probably shouldn't nationalize this race. Since that time, how have you seen the job that Democrats have been doing on that front?
So far, frankly, not effective. Okay. I mean, they have to focus obviously on the shutdown. I think that's, the effort there has been smart. They're right to hold on to the healthcare issue. The public cares about that. But frankly, having Bernie Sanders, out there telling us what to do in New York, I am so personally offended by that. This man left New York City in 1967 to live in one of the whitest states in the union. And now he's coming back and telling us how to deal with our issues. Go away.
Sing it, sister.
So I am over that personally, and I find that personally offensive. And AOC, she's got to find another star to hook herself to.
I mean, I love your passion. I think while you don't speak for all New Yorkers, you definitely speak for some. I know that New Yorkers like seeing Bernie and Mamdani and AOC together, but I take your point.
They didn't live through the fiscal crisis in New York. That's why.
Thank you so much, Esther. Thank you so much for coming on. We really appreciate it. Great to see you again, and a great way to bookend this show and this race. And thank you for tuning in. We'll see you back here on Monday and Tuesday, and actually the rest of all next week to cover the race and the aftermath. So enjoy your weekend, enjoy your Halloween. Thanks for tuning in to Battleground NYC.
Thanks for watching Battleground. We're now joining Live Now's nonstop stream of live and breaking news.
The future of our state hangs in the balance. I've been here almost 64 years now. I never remember it ever being this bad.